Hey man, thanks for checking out Billy the Kid Adventures. Join me as I discuss the unique and often hilarious beginnings of the Cleveland Cavaliers, including their original home at the Cleveland Arena here behind me on Euclid Avenue back in the day. In 2016, the Cleveland Cavaliers won their first championship, bringing the city of Cleveland its first pro sports championship in 50-plus years. Everyone in the city of Cleveland knows about the Cleveland Cavaliers championship, but few people know the team's unique and sometimes hilarious origin. Former attorney turned developer turned sports entrepreneur, Cleveland's Nick Maletti became owner of both the Cleveland Arena and the city's hockey team, the Cleveland Barons, in 1968, with an eye on bringing a National Basketball Association franchise to his hometown. In February 1970, Maletti realized his dream, brokering a deal to bring an NBA team to his hometown of Cleveland as the league expanded from 14 to 17 teams. Jubilation quickly turned to anxiety as Maletti realized he had a mere 8 months to be ready by October's season start to build his team with no name, no coach, and no players. The nameless new Cleveland NBA team needed a name, so a contest was created to generate fan interest. After whittling the list of potential team names down to 5, Cleveland fans overwhelmingly selected the name Cavaliers, denoting a swashbuckling, gallant image, submitted by Jerry Tomko, winning in a landslide. Shortly after settling on a team name of Cavaliers, a new logo was created by Pitt Studios. Meanwhile, money was needed. Lots of money that Maletti didn't have to pay the NBA for the remainder of his new NBA franchise. So stock in the new Cavaliers was offered at $5 a share. Maletti's first step in building the Cavs, 1 month later in March, was to hire Big Ten University of Minnesota coach Bill Fitch. Maletti was familiar with Fitch from his prior gig coaching Bowling Green, where Maletti had attended and stayed active as an alum. Literally days after being hired as a new head coach, Bill Fitch was in charge of the college draft. The Cavaliers needed basketball players and obtained their first ones from the college draft. Relying on his experience from coaching at Minnesota in the Big Ten Conference, Coach Fitch selected several players from the Big Ten, with John Johnson being the first Cleveland player selected, and thus becoming the first ever Cavalier. Shortly after the college draft, Coach Fitch quickly prepped for the pro expansion draft, whereby the Cavaliers would select available players, mostly backups, from existing NBA teams. Problem was, as a college coach, Fitch had little knowledge of these pro players and resorted to buying basketball cards to get a quick player bio and statistics. Topps basketball cards became an invaluable reference source for Coach Fitch, and as he would joke later, if he hadn't gotten basketball cards for certain players, he may not have even selected them in the expansion draft. Finding a place for the Cavaliers to play would be one of the easier tasks for owner Nick Maletti to do, as he already owned the Cleveland Arena, which would now be home to both the Cleveland Barons and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And check out those ticket prices for the Cavaliers games at the arena. Even adjusted for inflation, Cavs tickets were an amazing bargain, as pro basketball was nowhere near as popular as it is today. Cleveland got a preview of their new Cavaliers basketball team as they played a few exhibition games before the regular season, including a unique hockey-basketball doubleheader at the Cleveland Arena featuring the Cleveland Barons. The team's wine and gold uniforms looked great, and the Cavs played competitively. That is, until the real season started. The Cavaliers' first season was horrible. They lost their first 15 games in a row, tying the mark for most losses to start a basketball season. After finally winning their first game, the Cavaliers proceeded to lose their next 12 games in a row, leaving them with a record of 1 win and 27 losses. It was during this early period of futility that a moment in Cavaliers history occurred. The Cavs scored a basket for their opponent as John Warren took off in the wrong direction and scored for the other team. Coach Fitch would look back years later and recall how the early Cavaliers' struggles would often lead to sleepless nights. The witty, good-natured Coach Fitch provided many notable quotes as a result of the early Cavaliers' struggles. On a personal note, as a young teen, I created 2 scrapbooks about the first few seasons of the Cleveland Cavaliers, filled mostly with clippings from the now-defunct Cleveland Press newspaper. A result of the Cavaliers' season-long poor record was low attendance, really low attendance, as the Cavs averaged only 3,000-plus fans per game. For comparison's sake, today's average NBA pro basketball game averages over 18,000 spectators per game. Included in my Cavs scrapbook are ticket stubs to several early games at the Cleveland Arena that I attended. The combination of pro basketball not being that popular at the time, coupled with the Cavs' terrible season, meant tickets were readily available. I was able to even get tickets to the front row for a couple games, for $6 at that. And I even wrote a fan letter to Coach Fitch that first challenging Cavs season, and he graciously wrote me back a 4-page letter. Then again, I can't imagine Coach Fitch got too many fan letters that season. After surviving that initial terrible season, 46 years later, the Cavaliers won their first championship in 2016, and Coach Fitch went on to the Boston Celtics, where he eventually ended up in the National Basketball Association Hall of Fame. Thanks again for checking out my Cleveland Cavaliers Origins video. For more Cleveland sports adventures, check out my Cleveland Dog Pound video. Link is below.